April 5th, 1826. Farmer's Journal, St. Catharines, Canada. The Talisman. This tale of the great unknown is so called from the cure of Richard Coeur de Lion, who, when the tale opens, is suffering under the enervating fever of the climate, by the application of a talisman. This was a stone which, at some particular situation of the moon, was infused in water, and the latter given to the patient to drink. A stone called the Lee penny, or Lee stone, is now actually in possession of Sir Charles Macdonald Lockhart of Lee and Carnwath, in Lancashire, the representative of the family of Lee, which is said to possess the wonderful quality of healing. It was brought from the Holy Land by Simon Lockhart of Lee, who accompanied one of the Douglases thither, and who obtained it from the wife of a Saracen chief as part of her husband's ransom. It has been in the family of Lee ever since 1320. It is of a triangular shape, and tradition has handed down accounts of the many wonderful cures it has performed. November 13, 1917, The Evening News, San Jose, California. 25 years ago today. Mission San Jose. Mrs. Mesa says that in the Spanish Californian days, if one patient fell ill and death seemed near, all the wise herb doctors used to consult just as physicians do today. These good old fairies went miles on horseback to help the sick. In those times, Warm Springs, near the Mission San Jose, had the only mineral water in the vicinity valued for medicinal properties. Here, patients were taken and held in water from the hottest springs and made to perspire under blankets until the patient had a Turkish bath. This was one of the best remedies of the wise old women, but after all it was not unlike the temescal of the Indians. From other Spanish ladies I learned that Mrs. John Sepulveda, mother of Mrs. Mesa, as well as Mrs. Mesa herself, many years ago were highly considered as Spanish herb doctors. Among the herbs most used by Spanish practitioners is the yerba pasmo, which grows in the mountains. It is good for lockjaw, toothache, and blood poisoning. In combination with alcohol and alum, its curative properties are strengthened. Yerba santa is excellent as a salve for boils. Yerba buena makes a good tea for the stomach. It was one of the best old remedies for colic. Both yerba santa and yerba buena are very common in the foothills. Yerba santa is a shrub with lovely purple flowers. It is being set out by people who make a specialty of having California shrubs in their gardens. Yerba buena is of the mint family and creeps over the ground. Another remedy often employed was the malva, or the common marshmallow, that always comes up in our gardens at the same time with our hollyhock seeds and exasperates us because we can scarcely distinguish one from the other. This is excellent for bladder trouble, and, fried with tallow, it makes a very good poultice. The elderberry blossom, or savio, when dried and taken internally, opens the pores and cures a cold. When the Spanish Californians were injured by falling from a horse, they applied a tea to the wound made of yerba sargazo. This is found growing near the rocks at Pacific Grove. Mrs. Lorenzo Cantua, who lives in West Virginia Street, has it often brought to her. Cascara had as important a place in the home pharmacy of the Spanish Californians as it has in all drugstores. The Spaniards called it casca sagrada, or sacred bark. Mrs. Cantua sends to the country by her friends, has them fetch her herbs, wraps them in paper bags, and puts them away in jars. In this way, she always has a supply of medicine. Mrs. Cantua's knowledge of herbs comes from what she learned from her relatives. She was a Narvaez of the San Juan Bautista Rancho. June 21, 1893, Meriden Daily Republican, Meriden, Connecticut. Harlem's Healing Spring. Water from a Battlefield of the Revolution. New York Times, June 19. Early morning travelers on the L cars may have noticed at the double curve at 110th Street and 8th Avenue, overlooking Morningside Park, a stream of people winding its way up the paths which lead to the ramparts. They were of all kinds and conditions of men, women, and children, and every one of them carried a pitcher or a can. Further up, the crowd massed and struggled for possession of a point of vantage, while the park guards made futile attempts to preserve order. The cause of the commotion was nothing more nor less than an intense desire to possess what, under ordinary circumstances, should be as free as air, but which in this case seemed to command a premium: a cup of water. It seems that the residents of Harlem have lately discovered the therapeutic properties of a spring which finds outlet through an old piece of drain pipe sunk in the bank high up under the parapet of Morningside Park. That the spring does possess medical qualities is attested by many who have tried it, and is vouched for by every old woman in the neighborhood. Harlem doctors are said to prescribe it for their patients, and many stories of its wonderful effects on the system are current in Upper New York. A reporter of the New York Times traced the water to its source yesterday morning, and found that it had its origin far more deep than its users had supposed. In a field which lies just beyond the road which skirts the ramparts is an old well marked by a millstone and half covered with boards and stones. The field is part of the old DePeester estate, which has been occupied by Henry Tone and sold recently to St. Luke's Hospital. The old homestead, which figured as a county residence of the DePeesters years ago, is still standing, but it is to be torn down as soon as Mr. Tone, who has lived in it 50 years, can make up his mind to move. The house is over 200 years old, and when it is leveled, New York will lose one of its landmarks. It was used during the Revolution as a headquarters by Washington after the memorable retreat from Long Island. Later, when Washington had moved northward and established his headquarters on Kingsbridge Heights, Lord Cornwallis used the place for his headquarters. Its position is historic, inasmuch as it stood in the center of the only battle that ever took place on Manhattan Island, the Battle of Harlem Plains. Almost on the very spot where now is found the medical spring fell the brave Colonel Knowlton, whose retreating command, stung to the quick by the bugle call of the 42nd Highlanders, turned on their pursuers and drove them across the valley and well up the sides of McGowan's Heights. Here it was also that General Reed fell, wounded in several places, and here the almost obliterated traces of the old stone wall behind which the British made their last stand can still be faintly seen. On September 16, 1876, the New York Historical Society used this house as a rallying point to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Harlem Plains, and in the parlor of the old mansion hangs a neatly engrossed resolution thanking Mr. Tone for the use of the house and grounds. John Jay spoke at the meeting and described the battle in eloquent language. The old well in which the spring originates used to be a fish pond, and Mr. Tone tells how, in the early days, he used to pull the speckled beauties from its shining depths. Afterward, when the supply was exhausted, he emptied the pond which was fed from a spring, and led the water down to where its present outlet is in the park, under the ramparts of the drive. The people who go up daily for a pitcher of the water for which so much is claimed scarcely pause to think of how many heroes fell on that spot, or to speculate whether the blood of the fallen patriots, intermingling with the soil, has not imparted to the spring some of that elixir of life which has come down through the years, and in some mysterious way given the water its healing qualities.